Welcome back on the AM show. Before I introduce the guest with whom I'm going to be dilating on all those matters of national interest that we have on the chopping board for you this morning, just know that water is life, and Awake is premium purified water treated through a strict purification process to ensure that every last bottle on the market refreshes you better. And guess what? We have the perfect sizes for all purposes and occasions. 330 ml bottles, 500 ml bottles to fit your pockets and bags, as well as 750 milliliter bottles for the heavy drinkers and 1.5 liters for those who always want more. Now, our 19-liter jar bottles are also ideal for homes and offices. So wherever you are covered. All you must do now is drink Awake Purified Drinking Water wherever you go. So choose a bottle of Awake Purified Drinking Water today and get quality hydration. Awake Purified Drinking Water, one for life. Remember, for every bottle you buy, an amount is donated to the National Cardiothoracic Center. It's another quality product by the Kasapreko Company Limited. For bulk purchases, just reach them on 0262 351 251. This advert is FDA approved. But let's get now into the conversation for the day, and let me let you know. We have one side, a representative of the NDC in the studio, because we attempted getting from the other side, mainly the MPP, the administration in power, and as has happened on a few occasions, they did not give us anyone. So just so you know, if you don't find representation from that end, it is not for a lack of trying. We cannot force anyone to come on the show. And if the NDC person is not here and the MPP person is here, we'll go hard on the issues. And if the NPP person is also not here, same. We don't determine that. Just wanted to situate that. We have joining us for a conversation on ECG meter theft, on the FBI collaborating with the OSP on the Cecilia Abnadapa issue, and then the governing New Patriotic Party lacing its boots for its presidential primary, among other matters of national scope. Joining us, he is the Member of Parliament for Bongo, Edward Bawa. A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, boss. How are you?
Did you just call me boss? I'm not boss.
Hey,
yeah, I'm the smallest man in the country.
Are you sure?
You are the bosses. You are the ones who make the laws and all of that. So you are the ones out there. It's just that some of the laws that they say that some of the things you deliberate on in Parliament.
You know, be correct, right?
You know, that they go well like that. But anyway, it is what it is. Thanks for making it on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
How's Bongo?
Bongo is doing well. Bongo is doing well.
When was the last time you were there?
Oh, I just came back about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yes, I came back first week of October, so that's about a week and a half ago.
Okay.
Yeah, Bongo is doing very well. Apart from the fact that you still have those challenges and the common challenges of the economy and what have you. I was just listening to your morning show, that's the radio side, and then they were talking about inflation coming down. I mean, if you look at the figure, so
it's at 38.1 now.
38.
We've been at, I mean, we hit something around 54, 52 point something, 54.
Yeah. But the interesting part
fell 48. I think we hit 40 recently, 40.1, and now it's at 38.1.
But the interesting part is that if you disintegrate what you call disaggregate what you call it, the components, you realize that food inflation is still very high.
Indeed.
Yes, about 49%.
It's one of the highest in Africa still.
Very high. And so in rural areas like that, these are areas that will be challenging for them. But this is the basic need that you, as a human being, you will be relying on. And if you still have food inflation being around 49.1 or thereabout, that is a bit worrying. Particularly in the face of the fact that we have indicated that we implemented a program of planting for food
and jobs.
And now even there's a second phase that has been launched and what have you. So it puts into question whether there's some success in that particular program or not. The Bongo has been fine. Yeah.
So if you read, since you started off on that trajectory, the story as well is in the Business Finder newspaper. So let me just bring you some scoop on that. The government statistician also made mention of this in a briefing yesterday, that inflation for food and non-alcoholic beverages declined further to 49.4% from 51.9% in August. So there has been some decline of about 0.16, or 1.6 percentage points, while non-food inflation declined by 1.6 percentage points to 29.3%. percent. So I think bit by bit, some of the metrics are showing some decline. But here's where it becomes tricky. When you go out there, something like fish, for example, I've noticed that when you go to any of these eateries or even the wayside joints and whatever, fish has become very expensive. If you look at some of us, we like the Zango rice and you go to some places and what they are now selling for about 25 cedis, fish. You look at it and not too long ago, that same piece of fish would have been 10, 15 cedis. And now it's about 25 cedis.
Look, Ben, one of the things that if you want, just go on the street. People believe that the figures that we have, and of course, these are supposed to be averages, but the figures that are churned out by the Statistical Service, people believe that the figures are far higher than that in terms of the inflation.
But why would you say that? Because the government statistician has time and again, he's come into the studio, he's been very gracious with us.
Yes.
Very often when we call upon him, he comes or he sends one of his main aides to come. Not aides, he's also in charge of it.
Yeah, one of the top guys.
Basically, the point they make is from their basket, they have, I think,
they have a basket, yes.
300 or so items in the basket. Yeah. And they do the averaging, they do the weighting, and they have specific places that they go to check. So if their data doesn't necessarily reflect maybe your reality or my reality, it may not necessarily be because their data is skewed. There's also the thing about personal inflation that some people take for granted. So your inflation may be higher than the inflation of someone else on the street. You know why? Maybe you like to consume grapes, okay? Or you have taste and you want to consume certain things. And maybe because of your financial muscle, while if that person is getting grapes for 40 cedis or 45 cedis, that's like maybe his income for. So all of these must be put into perspective. I'm just saying that let's be fair to the GSS. Let's not say
I am not for
their figures are skewed.
You see, these are figures that are averages. They are averages. Averages do not really tell you the truth. They just give you a fair idea. Look, the inflation, for example, if you take food inflation, the food inflation for Accra would definitely be different for the food inflation from, say, Brown-Havre.
True.
You are getting a point. So there are people who have individual experiences because of the location in which they find themselves in.
And that's why regionally too, you would see that
so you see that regionally you see that
the inflation is different.
And you see, I have not taken time to look at this year's this current month's average.
The breakdown.
But if you look at it, it appears even the inflations in some of the less endowed regions are higher. Are higher in terms of they are higher, and I am yet to see, because usually the understanding is always that the urban areas will have more in terms of food inflation. Areas will be a bit higher because food is brought from the hinterland to this. So you calculate the issue of handling, transportation, what have you, and those things are all factored into what you get in the urban areas. But I have not checked this year, but I'm just saying generally, look. We should also. I just read an article by one of these lecturers from KNUST. UCC, who indicated that look, this downward trend of the inflation is not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be sustainable
because if you read the script, there is the projection that let me find out whether it's the GSS or the IMF. So. The IMF has lowered Ghana's average inflation forecast for 2023 to 42.2% from the earlier 55.4%. The IMF is also forecasting an end-of-year inflation of 31.3%, while the government of Ghana has projected 29%. So
let me tell you, we are going to have situations where we are going to festive seasons.
Yes, that will impact inflation.
Yes, it will impact inflation, and you will realize that where particularly these problems will come is that people will be chasing for dollars. Already you have a huge dollar bill that is given in terms of petroleum products. Then you now have a situation, because it's a festive season, people will be chasing dollars to go and come to bring. That is going to have an effect. And it is a seasonal trend that we always have, that when it gets to November, December, thereabout, because of the fact that people have to bring in import goods, the demand for the dollar becomes high. This is going to be factored into into the prices that are going to come. And so these are arguments people have just made. But let's watch and see, because this is just a forecast forecast sometimes may not necessarily be. I mean, before we started the year, we had indicated that our growth rate was going to be around 3% thereabout, isn't it? Isn't that what the Minister of Finance reported to us?
Indeed.
Then he reviewed it to 1.5. Now they said 1.2. But I've heard that the IMF country director is indicating that the 1.2 was based on some figures they earlier on had. But the new figures that are being churned out by the various institutions seem to suggest that the 1.5 growth will be met. So let's see how it goes.
So as far as, where you sit,
yeah.
When you look at the economy, we've been told by the IMF that some things are definitely going well as far as meeting their requirements. There has also been a lot of pushback in terms of whether we have actually met those requirements for the disbursement of the next tranche of money, the $600 million that will be given Ghana. From where you sit, and also as a member of the NDC, how do you feel we are placing, so to speak, as far as the economy is concerned? And you can rope in the bit about the Bank of Ghana as well.
Yeah, so let's put it in very clear. You see, the next tranche of the monies we are going to get is hinged on how we deal with the negotiation with our bilateral creditors, because it's supposed to be hinged on that.
People have started talking about China again.
Yes. So the question is that to what extent have we made progress in that? The finance minister seems to be giving some positive vibes, talking about the fact that, look, he thinks that they will reach an agreement. But that is exactly what he has to say. He should be the last person to say something that will look gloomy, because he needs to give some hope and other things. But I was also listening to one of the officials from the IMF. This person had to do with one of the rating agencies. And then the argument he was making is that we may be getting to this agreement somewhere in the first quarter of next year. You see, even the bilateral ones may not be as difficult as the private, creditors. Those who just in the market, they have gone to invest their monies and then you've picked up. That is going to be a very difficult one. So I think that we desperately need the next tranche, which is about $600 million.
Right.
We definitely need that for various reasons. But it also depends on how we negotiate with our bilateral, creditors in this particular area. I wish the finance ministry very well. Now, but back to the issues as to whether we have turned the corner or not. Look, all these things, gymnastics. You tell me that, inflation is this. You tell me that our reserves are that, are this. All these things do not directly affect them. Because if you go to the streets, people are just suffering. Electricity bills are going up because these are part of the conditions that they have given, that they must ensure that the automatic, tariff review, which is 3 months, should always be done. So electricity tariffs are going up, water tariffs are going up, and these are the basic things that people simply depend on just to survive. And therefore, going back and looking at the situation of the situation of the Ghanaian is still not good. It's still not good. So the figures people will mention and say that, we have turned, I'm going to borrow the words of the finance minister, we've turned the corner. I do not believe that we have turned.
It's been a number of months since he spoke about turning the corner. But let's go back to the IMF and getting the second tranche of about $600 million, which would take our total now to about $1.2 billion. It is crucial that, and it's instructive to note, Kojo Nkrumah, the information minister, says it's not, getting creditors, external creditors, to pander to us or reach some agreement with us is not a prerequisite for getting the second tranche. That is what he said. And quoting him, he says, I don't think that if we look at the fine print, that agreement is a condition precedent for us accessing the next tranche. That's what he said. It is supported in a way by University of Ghana Business School Professor Godfred Bokpin, who says, I haven't seen it anywhere. Maybe I've not read the document well enough. I haven't seen anywhere where it stated that reaching an agreement with external creditors was a precondition to getting the second tranche. That's what he said. But, Stefan Rude was in town. He's been spearheading the drive as far as Ghana is concerned with the IMF. He made it clear in an interview with Joy News that government must secure the required financing assurance from external bilateral creditors before its board, that is the IMF board, can approve the next tranche of funds for the country. And let me quote him as well, then you react. Just like we got the financing assurance before Ghana secured the IMF program, this financing agreement from the external creditors is needed before the IMF board approves the first program review. What do you make of all of this? So it's a bit confusing.
Yeah, but I think that in all the three people that have who you have,
are you going to say the most relevant is
the most relevant is the IMF person? He's the most relevant because they are going to release the money. They know the conditions you are supposed to meet before they release the money. You see, as a Ghanaian, where I said, I will wish that it shouldn't be a condition. I would wish that it shouldn't be a condition because desperately government needs these resources. But they are releasing the money. They are indicating to you that, look, you need to meet the X, Y, Z as conditions before those monies are released. And so I just want to hope that when the finance minister speaks and says that, look, they are seriously talking to the bilateral, what they call it, creditors, that would see. Particularly, just as you said, particularly China. You know, I think last year or so, the government had already started going there. They went with a team to go and have a conversation with the Chinese authorities. The understanding I got was that it coincided with, I think, one of those their national festive periods. And so even though the finance minister spent all the monies without even checking on that, when they couldn't really have an engagement with the Chinese people. I'm just hoping and praying that they will be able to get that done. But you see, a government that had prided, you remember they said that never again will we go to IMF, never again will we do this. For a government that had prided itself and said that they had all the men to ensure that we break away from the Bretton Woods institutions, to now be at the foot of these same people and beginning.
They mentioned that, I mean, COVID-19 struck, Russia and Ukraine happened. You can't run away from those.
So, my brother, you know that all of us and every economist who was in this country, the World Bank and other things had said that already our numbers were on the downturn by 2019. Our numbers were downturn by 2019. Besides that, look, if you have a situation where...
And there had been warnings in respect of our borrowing.
Because we were just borrowing. I mean, look, even during the COVID time, Ben, I am very convinced that with a very responsible government, having resources to the tune of about 21.8 billion in terms of the COVID fund.
You know, whenever that figure comes up, there are concerns about the tallying and where what came from and what it was used for.
Oh, look, if you look basically,
and you in Parliament, you were part of the approvals.
Yes,
so I don't know. When sometimes you bring up these things, you were there.
So you see the 21.8 billion.
Gave the approval.
You see the 21.8 billion. These are figures gleaned from the budget, and these were the approvals we made. And from the European Union, the Stabilization Fund, what do you call it, the African Development, a number of sources of funding.
But when I talk about Parliament, let me just add this. When I talk about Parliament, I know there were times when you hauled ministers before you to give account and all of that. Yes. But I feel that in many instances, Parliament practically did nothing. Look for example, the former sanitation minister, Cecilia Abnadapa. We'll be talking about her shortly as well. 43 million, if I recall, $43 million was allocated for the ministry.
Yes.
Sanitation and water resources, and the work that had to be done. I remember when she was brought before Parliament. I don't know. I wasn't satisfied with the responses. Were you satisfied? What happened from there?
So you see, with Abena Cecilia, what's her name again? Cecilia Abnadapa. When she was brought to Parliament to answer those questions, and she indicated that, gave a breakdown of how these expenditures and other things were made. Usually, when you have a minister come and state that X amount of money is meant for this or has been used for this, the only time you can go after is that when you have an audited account. When you have an audited account of actually what has been approved, what has been expended,
the Auditor General did not come out.
Yeah, because those things have not been audited yet, and so sometimes
not yet.
At least they have not been presented to Parliament yet.
Right.
You see, so what then happens is that you are handicapped in challenging the public officer when the public officer says that X amount of money is being used for this. today you hear that as part of the problems when unfortunately this scandal broke, people quickly went to talk about the amount of money that was approved for, what do you call it, the amount of money she said she had used for the desilting of the Odo and what have you. People quickly went into areas like that. The only time we can have ways of commenting on some of these things is when there's an audited account on these things. You see how actually these things were being. And it's not just the question of whether you said you spent this and whether you did it, whether they should look at proper performance audit to see as to whether what was devoted for her is being done. It's just like when we're talking about the issues of when people were talking about the COVID things and said that it was misused. The only time we started commenting on it properly was when, as part of the IMF conditions, that they needed to audit the COVID funds. And when the COVID funds were then audited, then it confirmed the suspicions that we had.
Are mechanisms apt in terms of, because it appears when you look at the Auditor General's reports and all of that, thankfully the last one I saw, which had about 15.1 billion Ghana cedis, I think, in terms of irregularities.
Yes.
About 99+% of it was recoverable, but sometimes it is not. So don't we have a rather reactive rather than a proactive system? Because in more advanced, not just jurisdictions, but where financial accountability in places like Japan, they don't wait for things to get bad for you to misuse before. There are measures in place which can quickly check you before things get to the worst.
In Ghana,
things get to the worst.
No, but in Ghana we do have that. So in Ghana, in all the ministries and what have you, that's why we have the
auditing,
the internal audit agency that takes care of that, and that is supposed to pre-audit your expenditure. You understand? So the question is whether the internal audit agency is effective in that.
And how all these irregularities still happen all the same. Because
remember that the internal auditor is still answerable to the chief director by a mechanism. That's his boss. It is.
So are you by this saying that whether NDC or MPP, you all dabble in the same game? Because we have all of these irregularities all the time.
No, but they are not.
So what you're basically saying? Hold on.
I refuse. Let me just make this point. To agree on that.
Let me make this point.
Yes.
Are you suggesting then that, depending on which administration is in power, yes, then the chief directors at these ministries, agencies, and the rest will have a role to play, and so auditing may be skewed.
You see,
because every time we have throughout this fourth,
when you have financial irregularities doubling about 200-300% in terms of increases, it tells you that there's something wrong.
So it's about the quantum for you.
Basically, we live in a human institution.
You acknowledge that it happens, but it's about.
Oh no, I cannot for a moment. Because I will be deceiving myself and deceiving the public to say that you have an audit report and you may not have the issues of financial irregularities and what have you. You have them. You have those ones. The question then is that what are the levels? Because if, for example, today, I see that in the course of the Auditor General's report, he says that the total financial irregularities maybe is just about, say, 15 billion. And the year after that, I see that it's about 12 billion. And the year after that, I see that it's about, I know that somebody is doing something right, trying to reduce this. But when you have a situation where these figures are increasing in an astronomical manner, it tells you that, one, the internal audit agency is not doing it very well. So the internal auditors in the various places are not doing their work very well. But more importantly, the superintending officers are reckless and are people who, to a very large extent, do not have this country at heart. That's my conclusion.
Well, it's it.